Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a ridiculously entitled neighbor invited over 100 guests to trespass on my property and vandalize my house to celebrate her wedding. I never gave her permission for any of this. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. The title story starts like this. The house next to mine is rented out as a holiday home for anyone who wants it. And for however long, so I never really know who is staying next door and I don't have a neighbor, so to speak. My house and this one are both relatively large, and for the sake of the story though, I feel I should mention that although the same size, the grounds around my house are much more lavish. I spend lots of my free time gardening and making everything look neat and proper. I've won many awards for it and take pride in it. As the next house along is a holiday home for people, the grounds and decoration is more minimalistic for the sake of cutting costs, which makes sense. You will understand why I've bothered to include this information later. One morning, I heard a bit of a racket coming from outside my house. It sounded like someone trying to get a key into the keyhole of my door. I walked over to my door in my robe, hearing, why isn't this working? While someone was trying to get the key in. I opened the door to be greeted by a bent-down woman in her mid-30s and a group of other women in a similar age. Hello? I asked as they all looked at me in confusion. We are here for the holiday home we rented. Why are you here? The head woman was already getting angry. Well, I live here. The holiday home is next door. I stated, relieved that it was just a misunderstanding and that they were not trying to break and enter. The woman with her uttered some apologies and began walking away from the house, but the head woman did not move. I don't think so. The house next door is nowhere near as grand as this one, and we certainly paid the price for a grand house. She put her hands on her hips. That's all well and good, ma'am, but I live here. You didn't rent out this house, so please leave. No, I don't want to. I've rented a house for me and my bridesmaids, and we deserve the best. She stomped her foot on the ground. Your key did not work, did it? I asked, and she shook her head. So this is not the house you rented. Goodbye. I shut the door. I heard some shouting coming from her, but then her group dragged her away. Given that they seemed a little bizarre, I rang up the owner of the house next door just to confirm that they were staying, which they actually were. He also apologized for their behavior and informed me they are staying for only 3 nights, and for the rest of the day I heard nothing from them, but at night there was a banging on my door. Yeah, thank you. We would like to move into here now. The head woman from earlier was swaying in my doorstep, clearly drunk. I've already told you, this is where I live and you have no right or permission to come inside and stay here. Karen responded, but I cannot hold their wedding at the shambles of a house next door while this luxurious mansion is just sitting here wasting away. Well, it's not wasting away because I live here and you are not hosting a wedding here. But the guests will look next door and wonder why I didn't book out the better home. It's going to be so embarrassing. She was falling all over. Not my problem. At this point, 2 of the other women had come over. Sir, just let us have it for 2 nights. The other home is practically the same. One of them chimed in. Guys, no, all of my belongings are here and I'm not just letting some strangers around all of them. Wow, so selfish. I'm getting married. The drunk spoke up again. I don't care, and now leave before I call the cops. I slammed the door. The next day, I was heading over to my parents for a week, so I packed up all my things, got in my car, and left. I hoped that in the next 2 nights while they were staying, they wouldn't do anything stupid with my house, but I was very wrong. On my way home, I drove past my neighbor's house and saw some different cars in their driveway. I assumed someone else was staying there now. While my mind was distracted by the sudden remembrance of the weird women who had stayed previously, I barely noticed the state my lawn was in. But when I did, I slammed on the brakes and stalled my car. My front lawn was absolutely trashed, the flowers were all tramped over, and I could see vomit in some of the flower pots. A lot of the statues were broken and crumbling down. I could only stare in shock. I got out of my car, leaving it where it was in the middle of the road, and walked around. I started crying. Months and years of work went into the upkeep of this garden, and now it's all ruined. Not only that, but lots of money too. I walked around to the back where I also had acres of lavish gardens and felt my breath catch in my throat as I saw that it was in the same state as the front. Flowers trampled, stone pathways kicked up and broken, statues and decorations broken or fallen down. The bushes looked dented as if people had fallen into them. I sat down on the only bench that wasn't covered in some kind of dirt or stained with something red. As I thought about the something red, it dawned on me. It was probably wine. And why would whoever did this have wine? Unless they were celebrating something. I already had a 90% feeling it was the woman next door, but the wine made me think that they didn't just come over and destroy my garden for the fun of it, she had her ceremony here. I raced upstairs and went into my office, opening up the CCTV footage of the past few days, and sure enough, on the footage of the third day they were staying, chairs were set up in rows in my backyard and a ceremony was held, clearly a wedding ceremony. I watched as about 30 guests filed in for the actual ceremony, and then a few hours later almost 100 more came for the reception and after party. I watched as in a matter of hours everyone went crazy, there was a lot of alcohol going around, and better yet, I even saw multiple people doing lines of coke and smoking something from a bong. People were falling all over, trampling my flowers, throwing up wherever it landed, some were even doing the devil's tango in some corners of my garden. I was sick to my stomach. I called up my lawyer immediately and sent him the footage. He came back to me with his condolences for my lawn and also told me that with this footage I could win a case so easily. As I was crafting a case, my neighbor gave me the details of those who stayed. He was very apologetic, but I assured him it was not his fault and thanked him for providing said details. Then we went to court. "You don't get it. I own the mansion. I could use it however I want, right guys?" The bride spoke up to the judge and then turned around to the jury, where a few of her wedding guests were. "Ma'am, wipe that smile off your face. We have all the proof that you do not own that property and that you were staying next door, in a house that you also don't own before you try that as well." The judge looked very unimpressed. "Now, as for the destruction you and your guests, which were facilitated by you, have caused, you will have a fine of $60,000. For the possession of the illegal narcotics which we see on the footage and found traces of in your home, you will get 5 years in prison." The judge stated. The woman's smile fell, but she broke into tears. "And as the property you were married on is not a licensed venue, you're also not legally married," she stated finally. The woman's tears grew as she was handcuffed and taken from the room. Her friends started snickering. Wow, great friends. I was not happy with the fact that I would have to redo my front and back lawn, but I was still pleased with the outcome of the case. And yeah, Ripe Stars, talk about a wedding gone wrong. Anyway, if you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment, because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much. And the next one is titled Petty Revenge Done Right. Background: I'm the general manager at a small boutique property in Brisbane, Australia. On sold-out weekends, our already limited parking becomes even more limited. Guest and her husband arrive early evening. And by the way guys, I think this was originally posted on r/Tales from the Front Desk, so keep that in mind. Anyway, the car park is already full, so they park in front of the front door to check in, blocking other vehicles in. Check-in is non-eventful. I rattle off my spiel and hand the guest her keys. The guest walks off and then stops all of a sudden. As she turns to face me again, I know that she is about to complain about something. We all know the pose, eyes widen as they ready themselves to plead their case at the point and wiggle their index finger in the air at shoulder height. Game on. Guest: "You need more parking spots. There's not enough for 40 rooms. Your car park is already full. I reserved a space." Me: "I'm sorry ma'am, but our parking is on a first come first served basis. We don't reserve spaces." If the car park is full, all of the on-street parking is free. Her: "Well, there should be 40 spaces for all 40 rooms. Side note, we have 12 spaces at the front of our property, which stretches from the street to our front entrance. Local council regulations state that we only need 1 space per 4 rooms, and we beat those regulations by 2. Me: "I understand your frustrations, Mrs. Nitpicker, but our plans to construct an underground parking garage has been delayed due to the pandemic-induced shovel shortage." Note: a shovel to be found within 100 kilometers. It should be dug out and fully operational by the time our city hosts the Olympics in 2032 though. Her: "You should extend your car park until then, so everyone's room has an assigned space. I think we should be given a discount for no parking." Me: The owner did consider just knocking this place down completely and making it into a public car park. But then he realized that we would have no rooms left for our guests, which would lower our property rating, so we decided to keep things as they are for the time being. Her: "And the discount I asked for?" I type away furiously whilst umming and ahhing for dramatic effect. Me: I have applied the discount to your folio. I have calculated the total amount it will cost you to park on the street for your 7-day stay and have deducted that amount from your bill. Is there anything else I can help you with, ma'am?" Her huffs and gives me a smug smile. Well, I should think so. Guest walks off. As I stated earlier, street parking is free 24/7. Her total discount was $0. She never noticed. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I still believe that the subreddit r/Tales from the Front Desk is pretty much a treasure trove for entitled funny Karen stories. People in the hotel industry just deal with so many Karens and Kens on a daily basis that they simply have a lot of good stories to tell. Let me know what you think about this subreddit. The next one is titled Dress Code Issues. Last weekend it was very warm for this part of the country. I was wearing a tank top and some jean shorts, so I had a lot of skin showing. Nothing indecent though, just bare arms and legs, and I might have had some cleavage showing. My husband and I were going to have a barbecue for some friends of his, so I went down to the grocery store to pick up a few final items. While I'm looking at the beans trying to decide how much we need, I feel a tap on my shoulder. I turn around to come face to face with an older lady who was definitely overdressed for the weather. I ask politely, "May I help you?" And she replies, "Don't you think you're dressed appropriately for this job?" I was confused, and so I replied, "Well, yes, but I'm not at a job right now. I work in a hospital as a lab technician." She scoffed and said, "Well, we'll see what Dave has to say about this." And I guess the old lady in this story means inappropriately instead of dressed appropriately, because that makes more sense. Anyway, Dave is apparently the manager and a friend of hers, so she races off to find him, and I'm just looking at beans, still trying to figure out how much we need. Just as I put a couple cans into my basket, the lady comes down the aisle with who I assume is Dave, wearing a manager-type apron. She is pointing at me and saying, "Do you let your employees wear things like that? It's shameful." Dave looks at me, starts to look at me like he knows me, and then shakes his head and tells the lady, "She doesn't work here." The lady looks at me and tells Dave, "Of course she works here. I've seen her stocking shelves and working at the register. It's absolutely shameful that you allow her to wear that on the floor." Dave looks at me and then, as if a light bulb went off in his head, takes his walkie-talkie and calls for someone named Linda to report to whatever aisle we were on. The lady is still berating him for what I'm wearing. Again, nothing wrong with it, just showing a lot of skin for it being such a hot day. When Linda comes into the aisle, I was shocked. She looked exactly like me when I was back in high school. It was like looking 10 years back in time, and I'm sure for her, she got a glimpse of what she would look like 10 years from now. Linda walks up to us asking what's up, and the lady quietly says, "My mistake," and starts to walk back down the aisle. But she has to get a last jab in, so she turns around and tells me, "Do you actually go in public like that? That's just wrong. Tempting men with your nearly naked body." I am married, by the way. The only man I have to tempt is my husband, and that's not hard to do. Dave had me and Linda posed together for a picture. He was also astonished at how close we look to each other. And here, Ripe Stars, I'm curious, have you ever been mistaken for an employee at a shop? Actually, I'm very ashamed to admit that last time I've been to Japan a few months ago, I have mistaken a customer for an employee. But then again, to be honest, I think you kind of get a pass if you're in a new country where you don't even really speak the language. This is not a situation like Karen, who probably lives in America since birth and still mistakes people for employees. Anyway, the next one is a church drama, Am I the A-hole story. My wife and I have one 14-year-old adopted daughter, Sarah, which is relevant to this story. We recently found out that she has PCOS, which I'd never heard of before. And by the way, Ripe Stars, I just googled that, and apparently it means polycystic ovary syndrome, short PCOS. Anyway, part of that is that she has a very large ovarian cyst that requires surgery to remove, and the surgery is scheduled and happening soon. Right now, she looks pregnant, which cannot be easy on a teenager. Between this illness and life in general, Sarah can be moody, and nobody in life is immune to fits of anger. Well, today at church, some woman decided that Sarah was in fact pregnant and that it was her chance at a free baby. Sarah went off on her, calling her a barren bitch, among other things, and causing a major scene that left that woman sobbing. My wife thinks that Sarah has anger issues and that we should punish her for not being sensitive. I don't agree. First off, why is that woman entitled to say anything if Sarah was pregnant? Infertility does not make you exempt from social norms. I recognize that my wife and that woman have suffered, but they don't get to do just whatever they want. With her medical problems, Sarah will probably be infertile herself, which I think puts her on par on that point. Secondly, Sarah lashed out in a rage due to mental and physical pain while provoked by an outrageous encounter. I don't know that that's the same as having anger issues or a personality problem. I've had physical fights over less. Maybe that nosy woman needed to learn a lesson, and she did. Anyway, Reddit, am I the a-hole for letting our daughter get off scot-free? Ninja added, Sarah will have to be on oral birth control for her entire life and may actually lose at least one ovary in this surgery. I would say she qualifies for infertility on those grounds. I don't know how it wouldn't. And here, Ripe Stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this story. Do you think that OP or his daughter were the a-holes here or not? Comment number 1, not the a-hole, but if your daughter is not in therapy, please get her some ASAP. It sounds like she is seriously struggling with this and she needs professional help. Comment number 2, not the a-hole, but you need to make sure your daughter at least knows that there are better ways to handle people like nosy church lady. Your daughter is young and hormonal as expected, but also in pain, so I'm cutting her a lot of slack too. However, like I said, she will grow up someday and will be expected to act maturely, so make sure she knows what that looks like. And the next one is titled, Ruin Me, Lose Your Money. A bit of background first, this petty revenge started when I was 9 and I was a small boy, 4'9", 35 kilograms or 77 pounds. The names you will need to know are David, the a-hole kid, Shayla, a-hole mom, and James, my best friend. So, the petty revenge starts in a small town in Ireland. I was in a primary school/elementary school. I was not very popular, but I just kept to myself and my friend group of 4. The biggest kid in the popular group was David. David did not care about me for most of primary school until 4th grade when we went to a forest park on a field trip. Most of the class was playing Bulldog Takedown. I decided not to because I had overindulged on McNuggets and felt sick, so I just sat down and cheered for James. For some reason, this personally offended David and he went over to me and dragged me onto the area where they were playing. He then said, "You're in play now," lifted me up and slammed me into the ground, breaking my collarbone and putting me in hospital. I don't have a picture from the time, but I will link a picture of the bump I still have nowadays. David got off with a warning because he claimed, "It was a mistake," and "It was just a game of Bulldog." But from then on, I was enemy number 1 in his eyes. Over the next year, he tormented me with little things like taking my pants and purposely kicking the ball at my head, but then the worst incident happened on our 5th class field trip when we went to an adventure center with no parents for 2 days. On the first night, all the boys were in one room and just having fun with some light pushing and shoving. David then picked me up on the top bunk and threw me into a bed frame, which split my head open. Again, I don't have a picture from the time, but I will link a picture of the scar I still have nowadays. I finally told my parents that David was bullying me and they made me move schools for my last year of elementary school. I remember when they told me that I shouted at them, "You are ruining my life," because I don't make friends easily. A year later, we decidedly moved from a small town in the Midlands to Dublin, the biggest city in Ireland. I was happy with that because I was going to have to start a new school anyway. Fast forward 3 years and it turns out after growing a bit, I'm pretty good at rugby. I got a scholarship to a very expensive rugby school in Ireland, which costs around $10,000 a year, and worked my way up to sitting on a board of 4 people to decide on what rugby player are given scholarships. The board had 4 people on it: the principal, our rugby coach, the director of rugby in our school, and a player on the rugby team, which was me. We had meetings every Wednesday where players that scouts had recommended would speak to us and tell us why they deserve a scholarship, and in order for a player to get a scholarship, the vote would have to be unanimous. One day David appeared. He walked into the room full of energy and ready to speak to us. As soon as I saw him, I knew it was David, but I could tell he did not recognize me. He spoke for about 25 minutes and I just sat there smiling and trying not to laugh. As soon as I spoke, I saw his eyes open wide. He recognized me and I could almost see him shudder. He knew he was not getting this scholarship. I spent 10 minutes taking apart every single good thing he said about how he played until my coach intervened. In the end, he got 3 out of 4 votes. 3 out of 4 votes meant he did not get a scholarship, but he could still pay the 10,000 euros to get in, which he did. By the time he was on my team, everyone knew what he did to me and his life was 3 weeks of hell. After 3 weeks, he left the rugby team and I found out through the principal that he left the school. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.